Betrayed, homeless, and broken, I woke to a stranger's knock that changed everything. A fortune waited, but it came with a deadly secret, one my family buried decades ago. Would I risk it all to uncover the truth? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Veil of Vengeance for more powerful stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. That I was sleeping in my rusted Honda Civic behind a Target when the old woman knocked on my window at dawn. The sharp rapping jolted me awake, and for a second, I thought it was the police again, ready to tell me to move along. But when I rubbed the fog from my eyes and looked through the cracked windshield, I saw her. An elderly woman in a charcoal coat, holding a leather briefcase like it contained state secrets. "Ethan Alvarez?" she asked when I rolled down the window. Her voice was shaking, but not from fear. It was something else, excitement, maybe, or disbelief. "Yeah, that's me," I croaked, my throat dry from another night of breathing recycled air. "If you're here about the car payment, I already told them they can have it back next week." "No, labeled welcome home. 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 Learn Alvarez," she said. "My name is Eleanor Stone. I'm an estate attorney from California." She pulled out an envelope with my name written in elegant script. "Your grandfather, Antonio Alvarez, passed away last week in Santa Barbara." "My grandfather died when I was 5, I said automatically. That's what my parents had always told me. Car accident. Closed casket. No questions. "That's what your family wanted you to believe," she said, her weathered hands trembling as she handed me the envelope. "But Antonio Alvarez died 7 days ago at the age of 91. And Mr. Alvarez, he left you everything." I laughed, but it came out bitter. "Lady, I'm sleeping in a parking lot. My wife left me for my boss. They took my house, my job, my dignity. Whatever scam you're running, I've got nothing left to steal." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents, each one bearing official seals and letterheads from law firms I'd seen on billboards. His mansion in Santa Barbara, valued at $42 million. A new Bentley Continental, 2 yachts moored in Monterey, and bank accounts totaling $280 million. The papers shook in my hands. This had to be a mistake or a cruel joke. Maybe Claire and Derek had hired this woman to torture me one final time, to give me hope just to rip it away. That would be their style. However, Eleanor continued, and there it was, the catch I'd been waiting for. "There's one condition. Your grandfather's will stipulates that to claim the inheritance, you must first uncover a secret your family buried 60 years ago. A secret about your grandmother Maria's death in 1964. "This is insane," I said, handing the papers back. "My grandmother died in a fire. It was an accident. There's no secret, no mystery, no fortune waiting for me in California." "Mr. Alvarez, do you know Derek Voss's father was named Leonard Voss?" My blood went cold. "How do you know about Derek?" "Your grandfather knew everything. He's been watching your family for decades, waiting for the right moment. He knew what Derek would do to you. He knew about Claire. He even knew you'd be sleeping in this exact parking lot." "That's impossible." She pulled out a photograph. It was me, taken 2 weeks ago, standing in the unemployment line. Someone had been following me. On the back, in the same elegant handwriting, "My grandson deserves better than what they've done to him. Your grandfather was many things, Mercedes and Alvarez, but he was never a liar. The fortune is real. The mansion is real, but so is the danger. The secret he wants you to uncover is the reason he had to pretend to be dead for 54 years. It's the reason Derek Voss targeted you specifically, and it's the reason your father has been lying to you your entire life." I thought about the last 6 months. Claire laughing as she climbed into Derek's Porsche. The security guards escorting me out of my own office. The first night sleeping in my car, wondering how a man who did everything right could lose everything so fast. What kind of secret is worth $280 million? I asked. Eleanor's eyes darkened. The kind that destroyed one family and built another. The kind that turned your grandfather from a simple shipping clerk into one of the wealthiest men in California. The kind that certain people would kill to keep buried. She handed me a business card and a cell phone. When you're ready to learn the truth, call me. But more names and 80s and Alvarez, once you start down this path, there's no going back. Your grandfather made sure of that. As her town car pulled away, I sat in my rusted Civic, holding proof that everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. And somewhere in California, a dead man's fortune was waiting for me to be brave enough to claim it 0.6 months ago. I had what most people would call a decent life. Every morning, I'd wake up at 5:30 in our Phoenix house, brew Guatemalan coffee in the kitchen I'd renovated with my own hands, and watch the sunrise paint the desert mountains gold. I managed a team of 12 sales representatives at Voss Biotech, pulling in $90,000 a year plus bonuses. Not rich, but comfortable, stable. The American dream, or close enough. Derek Voss had hired me 8 years ago when his company was half its current size. Back then, he'd actually walked the sales floor, knew everyone's names, even kept appointments, and me to my wedding. Ethan Alvarez, he'd said at the reception, raising his champagne glass, is the kind of man who builds empires. Loyal, dedicated, tireless. Claire, you've got yourself a winner. Claire had glowed that day in her white dress, her dark hair pinned up with her grandmother's pearls. She was working as a dental hygienist then, making decent money herself. We'd met at a charity 5K race where she twisted her ankle at mile 2, and I'd carried her to the medical tent. My hero, she called me, and I believed that's what I was to her. The house in Phoenix had been mine before we married. A 3-bedroom ranch with a pool I never used and a 3-car garage that seemed excessive until Claire moved in with her Audi and her endless shopping bags. I bought it with cash from my savings and a small inheritance from my Uncle Javier, who'd passed away when I was 25. Claire insisted on renovations immediately after our honeymoon. This kitchen looks like something from the 80s, she complained. And that master bathroom? Derek's guest bathroom is nicer than this. So we renovated. Granite countertops from Brazil, custom cabinets, a steam shower, a closet bigger than my childhood bedroom. Each upgrade cost more than the last, but Claire said it was an investment. You have to spend money to make money, Ethan. Derek says that all the time. Derek said a lot of things. I was learning that my parents, Carmen and Luis Alvarez, had been married 42 years and still held hands at Sunday dinner. Dad ran Alvarez Auto Repair on Cactus Road, a shop he'd built from nothing. His hands were permanently stained with motor oil, but those hands had put food on our table and kept a roof over our heads. Mom worked at the Phoenix Public Library, helping kids with their homework and running citizenship classes for immigrants. Work hard, stay humble, treat people right, Dad would say. That's the Alvarez way. My younger brother Mateo had joined the army straight out of high school, said he wanted to serve his country and see the world. He was stationed at Fort Hood, calling every Sunday to check in. How's the corporate life, Hermano? He'd joke. Still pushing papers while I'm pushing myself. My older sister, Sophia, worked as a nurse at Phoenix Memorial, pulling 12-hour shifts in the emergency room. She'd never liked Claire, though she kept her opinions mostly to herself. There's something about her eyes, Sophia told me once. They're always calculating something. The changes in my marriage started small. Claire quit her job 6 months after the wedding, saying she wanted to focus on making our house a home. Then came the designer clothes, the spa appointments, the weekend trips with her girlfriends to Vegas and San Diego. When I questioned the credit card bills, she'd get defensive. Derek's wife doesn't have to justify every purchase, she'd snap. Maybe if he were more ambitious, I wouldn't have to shop sales. The company Christmas party last December was when everything shifted. Claire spent half the night at Derek's table while I talked shop with clients. She'd laughed at his jokes, touched his arm when she spoke, leaned in close to hear him over the music. Derek's wife had left him earlier that year, taking half his assets and moving to Florida. Your wife's a firecracker, Derek told me that night, his hand on my shoulder, bourbon heavy on his breath. You're a lucky man, Ethan. By January, Claire was coming home late twice a week. Drinking and colleagues, and edited Anking, and drinking and club, she said. Pilates class, wine tasting with the girls. Her phone was suddenly password protected. She'd step outside to take calls. When we made love, which became increasingly rare, she seemed distant, like she was performing a chore. "You're paranoid," she'd say when I asked if everything was okay. "Maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't need hobbies." I threw myself into work, thinking if I could land the Peterson biotech contract, get that promotion Derek had been dangling for 2 years, maybe things would get better. Maybe Claire would look at me the way she used to, like I was her hero instead of her disappointment. I had no idea that while I was working late to save my marriage, my wife and my boss were planning to destroy everything I'd built. The Tuesday that destroyed my life started with Claire humming in the shower. She never hummed anymore, hadn't in months. But that morning, she sounded like a Disney princess. She'd even made breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast, which sat untouched as I rushed to prepare for the Peterson meeting. "Big day today," she said, kissing my cheek. Her lips felt cold. "Everything's going to change after today." I thought she meant the Peterson contract, $5 million in annual revenue if I could close it. Derek had promised me the regional director position if I landed it. The presentation was perfect, 20 slides of market analysis and profit projections. I'd rehearsed it 50 times, but when I arrived at Voss Biotech at 7:30, my key card wouldn't work. The little red light blinked at me like a warning. I tried 3 times before Marcus, the security guard I'd known for 8 years, opened the door from inside. "Mr. Alvarez," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Mr. Voss needs to see you. I'm supposed to escort you." "Escort me? Marcus, what's going on?" "Please, just come with me." The walk to Derek's office felt like a funeral march. My co-workers avoided eye contact. Maria Torres, who'd been my friend since my first day, suddenly became fascinated with her computer screen. The Peterson presentation materials were still in my briefcase, useless now. Derek's corner office overlooked Papago Park. He sat behind his mahogany desk, fingers steepled, an expression of practiced concern on his face. And there, perched on the armrest of his chair like she owned it, was Claire, my wife, in Derek's office at 7:45 in the morning. "Ethan," Derek said, his voice carrying that false sympathy I'd heard him use when firing people. "Please sit down." "What is she doing here?" Claire smiled, but it wasn't smile I'd fallen in love with. This was something predatory. "I'm here as Derek's support and to make sure you understand what's happening." "We're restructuring," Derek continued, sliding a termination packet across his desk. "Your position has been eliminated, effective immediately. The Peterson meeting is in 2 hours. I've worked on this for 6 months." "I'll be handling Peterson personally," Derek said. "Your work was adequate, but we need stronger leadership moving forward." "Adequate? I've exceeded quota every quarter for 8 years." "About that," Derek pulled out a folder. "We've discovered some discrepancies in your expense reports. Nothing criminal, but certainly grounds for termination with cause. No severance, of course." "What discrepancies?" "Every receipt is documented." "The dinner with Peterson last month," Derek said. "You claimed it was a business expense, but our investigation shows your wife was present. Personal use of company funds. You told me to bring her. You said Peterson liked to see stable family men." Claire laughed then, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, Ethan, still so naive. Derek and I have been documenting everything for months. The drinking problem you've developed, the inappropriate behavior at the office party." "What drinking problem?" Derek turned his computer monitor toward me. Security footage from last month's office party played on the screen. It had been edited, SP for 8 practice behaviorless together, to show me stumbling, leaning too close to female gray my words were slurred in conversations taken out of context. In reality, I'd had 2 beers over 4 hours, but the way it was cut made me look wasted. "Maria Torres has filed a complaint," Derek added. "She felt very uncomfortable with your advances, This is fabricated. Maria and I were discussing her daughter's college applications. That's not how she remembers it, Claire said. And I'm filing for divorce. My lawyer says the house is mine. Community property laws. Plus, I've been the primary homemaker. I've been documenting your emotional abuse, your drinking, your negligence as a husband. You haven't worked in 6 years. I've paid for everything with marital funds, I said. Every improvement, every mortgage payment during our marriage, all community property, she said. Derek's lawyer explained it all to me. Oh, and your personal accounts will be frozen pending the divorce proceedings. Standard procedure in cases involving financial abuse. Derek stood up, straightening his tie. Security will pack your desk. You have 10 minutes to leave the premises. Your company car needs to be returned Club, EPM. The laptop, phone, and corporate credit card bookie here. 8 years, I said, my voice breaking to great years I've Mrs. built this division. Real men don't cry like babies, Claire said, standing beside Derek, her hand on his shoulder. Maybe living in your car for eight wig will toughen you up. Teach you what real ambition lo steel gray edited and like. Marcus and another guard appeared at the door for 8 drinking, and as they walk edited and out, I heard Derek's steel gray, Mercedes behind edited and me. Mrs. Alvarez, why don't you stay? We should discuss your future opportunities with the company. By noon, I was standing in my empty office while Marcus packed my belongings into a cardboard box. By 5 p.m., I was handing over the keys to my company Audi. By midnight, I was parked behind a Target. My entire life fit in the trunk of my 10-year-old Honda Civic, the only vehicle still in my name. For 3 months, I lived in my car like a ghost, haunting parking lots across Phoenix. The Target on Indian School Road became my bedroom. The Planet Fitness on Bell Road was my bathroom until my membership expired. I'd shower at 5 a.m. when the staff was too sleepy to notice I'd been wearing the same 3 shirts in rotation. That McDonald's dollar menu became my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. One McChicken sandwich could be stretched into 2 meals if you ate slowly enough. The job applications blurred together after a while, 50, 100, 200 sent into the digital void. Every biotech company in Arizona somehow knew about my misconduct at Voss. Derek had poisoned the well so thoroughly that even temp agencies wouldn't return my calls. I tried retail, restaurants, anything. But explaining a 6-figure salary on my resume led to the same response. You're overqualified. My brother Mateo called from Fort Hood one night while I was parked behind an IHOP, stealing their Wi-Fi. Ethan, why haven't you been answering? Mom's worried sick. Phone got shut off. I'm using a burner now. Come stay with us. We'll figure something out. Mom and Dad's house had that electrical fire, remember? They're sleeping on Sophia's couch. She doesn't have room for another person. Then I'll send money. I've got $3,000 saved. Keep your money, Mateo. I'll figure this out. But I wasn't figuring anything out. I was dissolving, one day at a time. My suits hung in Gracia, ghosts of my former life. I'd lost one sounds. My reflection in the rearview mirror spoke, and Mrs. Mercice and police, and Miss Ranger with hollow eyes and steel gray Greco leagues, and Colleague Mandy's, and drinking, and MRSD for eight him, and Mrs. Machine Mandy creeping into high grease stubble. Then came that morning behind Target, April 15th, tax day, which felt like the universe's cruel joke. The knock on my window steel gray at 6 a.m. wasn't unusual. Security guards, police, off conversations, and her homeless people asking for cigarettes. But the elderly woman standing there looked like she'd stepped out him and of a different world. Eleanor Stone had still recognized, hair pinned in a neat bun, and wore a charcoal coat that probably cost more than my car. Her eyes were sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, studying me like I was a puzzle she needed to solve. After she'd dropped a bombshell about my grandfather's inheritance and driven away in her town car, I sat in my Civic for an hour, reading and rereading the document she'd left. The letterhead was real. I Googled the law firm on my phone, Stone, Bennett and Associates, Century City, Los Angeles. Their website showed a gleaming tower and a list of billionaire clients. The letter from my grandfather was what convinced me it wasn't a scam. His handwriting matched the birthday cards I'd received as a child before he supposedly died. But more than that, he knew things no scammer could know. Ethan, you have your grandmother Maria's eyes and her stubborn spirit. When you were 4, you broke your arm falling from a mesquite tree behind our house in Tucson. You told everyone a coyote had knocked you down because you didn't want to admit you'd been climbing after I told you not to. That defiance will serve you well in what comes next. I did remember that tree and the lie about the coyote. But how could a dead man know about that? I called my father from the Target parking lot. His voice went silent when I mentioned Antonio. Where did you hear that name? He's dead, Dad. And apparently, he's been alive all these years. Come home now. Don't talk to anyone else about this. The drive to Sophia's apartment took 20 minutes, but felt like hours. My mind raced through every conversation I'd had with my parents about their past. The stories that didn't quite add up. The photo albums with pages missing. The way they changed the subject whenever I asked about our family history. Sophia's one-bedroom apartment in Tempe was cramped with 4 adults inside. My parents sat on the couch like defendants awaiting a verdict. Sophia stood by the window, arms crossed, her nurse's scrubs still on from a night shift. Is it true? I asked. Has Grandpa been alive this whole time? My father looked older than his 65 years. His mechanic's hands trembled as he reached under the couch and pulled out a metal lockbox I'd never seen before. We need to go to Tucson, he said. To the old house. There are things buried there, things we promised never to disturb. But if Antonio is really dead, then the promise died with him. What things? Evidence, my mother said, her library quiet voice steady. About what really happened to your grandmother. About why Derek Voss wanted to destroy you. About a secret worth killing for. Sophia grabbed her car keys. I'll drive. Ethan looks like he hasn't slept in weeks. As we loaded into her Toyota Corolla, my father turned to me. Whatever that lawyer told you about the inheritance, it's real. Antonio called me once, 10 years ago, after Eduardo died. He said he was building something for us. For you specifically. Why me? Because you're exactly like him. Stubborn enough to lose everything rather than compromise your integrity. And smart enough to build it all back when the time comes. The drive to Tucson would take 2 hours. 2 hours to prepare for a truth 60 years in the making. The ruins of the old Alvarez estate in Tucson looked like a mouthful of broken teeth against the desert sky. Fire had consumed most of the structure decades ago, leaving only stone foundations and a few stubborn walls. Weeds grew through cracked tile floors, and a rusted gate hung crooked on its hinges. This was where my grandmother Maria had died, where our family story had fractured into lies, and why Father led us through the debris with the confidence of someone who'd walked this path in nightmares for 50 years. We descended into what remained of the basement, using our phone flashlights to navigate the darkness. In the far corner, behind what looked like a solid concrete wall, Dad ran his hands along the surface until he found what he was looking for. Your grandfather was paranoid, even before he had reason to be, Dad said, pressing specific spots in sequence. He built this himself in 1962. The wall swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a room that time had forgotten. Inside, a massive safe stood like a monument to secrets. Dad knew the combination, Maria's birthday, forward and backward. The lock clicked open with a sound like bones breaking Merspalice, and inside were stacks of documents, P-Mrs. Mershatographs yellowed with age, and a modern edition, a USB drive taped to an envelope marked for Ethan. My mother pulled out the first photograph. It showed Maria, beautiful and fierce at 35, standing next to a man who looked like Conversations and a darker version Opolis, and for my father recognized, Eduardo. Mom whispered, Maria's older brother. Dad spread the documents across a dusty table. In 1964, your grandmother discovered that Eduardo was using the family shipping business to smuggle drugs from Mexico. He'd partnered with wealthy investors who needed a legitimate front conversations, and he said for their things, res Haitians. When Maria confronted him, threatened to go to the police, Eduardo couldn't let that happen. A Palestine report from August 15, 1964, described police, and conversations, accidental, recognize him, and it claimed faulty steel gray wiring. One victim, Mari carefully, and 36. But look at this, Sophia said, holding up another document. It was a coroner's preliminary rep police, and Nord, dated the same day. But Nev steel gray blunt force trauma to the skull, and carefully and conversations, and consistent with fire steel gray damage at him, and Antonio found that report hidden in the coroner's persona appointments, and continued. He spent 2 years gathering evidence, recording conversations, documenting the drug routes. He had enough to destroy Eduardo and everyone involved. But then Eduardo made his move. Another film and photograph showed 3 men at a restaurant. Eduardo, an older man I didn't examine carefully, and someone who made my blood freeze. A younger version of Derek Voss's father, Leonard Voss. Dad confirmed. He was Eduardo's main investor. When Antonio got too close to the truth, Eduardo threatened us. You were just a baby, Ethan. Mateo wasn't even born yet. Sophia was 3. Eduardo said we'd all burn like Maria if Antonio didn't disappear. So Grandpa faked his death. He made a deal, Dad said. He'd vanish, take his evidence, and never surface as long as Eduardo left us alone. But first, he emptied the family business accounts. Money that was conversations, and still gray rightfully Maria's anyway, $50,000. Mom picked up the story. We held a funeral with an empty casket. Told every on him, and did a car accident 80s and recognized T. Eduardo watched us for recognize years. MacLabelle carefully, and he kept quiet. Your father couldn't even run his odd names, and conversations, and thought Eduardo's men checking in totaling. Mathen Eduardo died 10 years ago, Dad said. Heart attack. Within a week, I got a call from Antonio. First time I'd heard his voice in 30 years. He said he'd invested Thalabella du Sand carefully. Legal carefully and conversations, Anley. Real estate in California recognize. ING the Labella build, welcome home, 80s Andelma 5. Labella build, welcome home, labeled, welcome home, labella build, welcome home, labeleds. Tech stocks in the 80s, Amazon and Apple in the early 2000s. He'd built an empire, all legitimate, all untraceable to our family. I plugged the USB drive into Sophia's laptop. Dozens of folders appeared, financial records, recordings, photographs. One folder was labeled Derek Voss, like father, like son. The recordings were damning. Derek discussing off-the-books drug trials using Eduardo's old smuggling routes, bribes to FDA officials, tests on undocumented immigrants who couldn't complain, and recent recordings, only months old, of Derek planning my destruction. Ethan Alvarez is Antonio's grandson, Derek's voice said on one recording. If the old man dies and leaves him anything, Ethan might start digging. We need him ruined, discredited, destroyed before that happens. Another voice, Claire's, responded with a laugh. Leave that to me. He's so trusting, so naive. Give me 6 months, and he'll be nobody. Eleanor Stone answered her phone on the first ring when I called. You found it, she said. It wasn't a question. Everything. Evidence about Maria's murder, the drug smuggling, and Derek's current operations. Your grandfist courted. He also knew you'd have a choice. Use it for revenge or justice. What would he want? He wanted you told LaBelle be better than the man who destroyed your grandmother. The FBI has been building a case against Derek Voss for years. This evidence could fin a label chit. As for your inheritance, there's one more thin labelled, welcome home, that Mr. Murthy last folder on the drive. The Flintlerm folder was labeled welcome home. Inside was a video file. I clicked play, and my grandfather's face appeared, older than any photo I'd seen, but unmistakably family. His eyes were mine, or mine were his. "Ethan," he said, his club andois strong despite his age. "If you're watching this, you've learned the truth. I'm sorry for the years of lies, but I would do it again to keep you safe. The money, the houses, the yachts, they're just things. The real inheritance is your freedom from fear, your family safety, and the chance to live with truth instead of secrets. Make Derek Voss pay for what he's done, but don't let revenge consume you. Build something better." Maria would have wanted that. The video ended with him holding up a recent photo of me, taken just months ago, standing outside the unemployment office. "I never stopped watching over you, Mijo. Now it's your turn to soar." I stood in my grandfather's Santa Barbara mansion 6 weeks later, watching the sunrise paint the Pacific Ocean gold. The same sun, a different world. The estate sprawled across 15 acres of Maniculabelt, welcome home to red gardens and ocean views, with a main house that felt more like a museum than a home. 22 rooms filled with art and memories of a man I never really knew, yet who knew everything about me. The FBI had moved fast once I handed Club and over the evidence. Derek Voss was arrested at his country club. The programmer sagged out in handcuffs while his golf buddies watched. The charges read like a novel: racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy, bribing federal officials, and running illegal drug trials that had killed 12 people. Claire got swept up as an accomplice to fraud and conspiracy. Her designer clothes and Audi wouldn't do her much good in federal prison. The divorce was annulled due to fraud. Turns out, when your spouse conspires with your boss to destroy your life through criminal means, judges take that seriously. I got my house back, though I'd already decided to sell it. Too many memories of betrayal soaked into those granite countertops and custom cabinets. That MY family had moved to California within a month. Dad sold his auto shop to his best mechanic and bought a new one in Monterey. Learned paid in cash. Mom took a job at the Santa Barbara Library, running programmers' programmies and windscreen for kids like she'd always loved. Sophia transferred to community hospital, working regular hours for the first time in her career. Mateo left the Army when his tour ended and started college at UC Santa Barbara, studying business. We all lived close enough for Sunday dinners, but club and programmess dinners, but far enough to have our own lives. Maria Torres called me last week, crying through her apology. Derek had threatened her daughter's scholarship and promised her a promotion if she played along with the harassment complaint. I told her I understood. Fear makes people do terrible things. I even offered her a job at my new company, which she accepted with gratitude that broke my heart a little. That new company was my grandfather's final gift. He'd left instructions with Eleanor Stone, detailed plans for a biotech company that would operate ethically. No shortcuts, no bribes, no testing on desperate people. We'd make less profit, but sleep better at night. I hired Derek's best researchers, the ones with consciences who'd been looking for exits. Within 6 months, we have our first drug in trials, an affordable insulin that could change millions of lives. The U.S. attorney called it the biggest biotech fraud case in Arizona history. Derek's empire crumbled in days. His investors fled, his employees scattered, and his reputation was destroyed beyond repair. He'd spend at least 20 years in federal prison, possibly more. Claire got 5 years and lost everything she'd schemed to steal. The house, cars, the clothes, all seized as products of criminal conspiracy. But I didn't celebrate their downfall. I was too busy learning who Antonio Alvarez really was through the things he'd left behind. His study contained thousands of books, many annotated in his careful handwriting, philosophy, business, history, all searching for answers to the same question. How do good people survive evil without becoming evil themselves? He'd found his answer in patient revenge, not the hot, quick kind that burns everything it touches, but the slow kind that builds something better while waiting for justice. He'd turned $50,000 of blood money into generational wealth, all legitimate, all earned through intelligence and patience. He'd watched his family from afar, protecting us even when we didn't know we needed protection, In his greenhouse, I found rows of chili plants, the same variety Maria had grown in Tucson. He'd kept her alive in small ways, tending plants she'd loved, cooking recipes she'd created, and speaking to her photo every morning in Spanish. Love doesn't die just because the person does. Standing in that garden, surrounded by proof of a grandfather's patient love, I finally understood the real lesson. We all face moments when the world tries to break us, when the people we trust betray us, when we lose everything that seemed to matter. That's when we learn who we really are. Some people break and stay broken, bitter and small. Some break and rebuild themselves as weapons of revenge. But the lucky ones, the strong ones, break and rebuild themselves as something better. They take their pain and transform it into purpose. They turn their losses into lessons others can learn from. Why grandfather had given me more than money. He'd given me proof that patient justice beats hot revenge, that building beats destroying, and that love survives even decades of separation. He'd shown me that real strength isn't about never crying or commanding respect through fear. Real strength is protecting the people you love, even if they never know you're doing it. Maria Alvarez died seeking justice. Antonio Alvarez lived delivering it. And Ethan Alvarez, I'm just trying to be worthy of them both. Fire, thanks for listening. Sparkling heart if this story moved you. Share it with someone who needs it. Drop a comment with the part that hit you most. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories.